Have you ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix situation? What happened? 1. I live in NYC. The L train runs from Brooklyn to Manhattan, under the East River. In Manhattan, the stop are 1st Avenue, 3rd, then Union Square, which is a major transfer point. During morning rush hour in 2012, I was in packed L train, which emerged from the East River at 1st Avenue, opened its door as per usual, closed them, then proceeded along the track as per usual. About 30 seconds later, the train stopped and the announcer, 1st Avenue, 3rd Avenue next, stand clear. I looked around a bit stunned, but the bleary-eyed passengers were mostly staring into their phones. I imagined I must have just gotten confused. The doors closed again. The train took off down the track, slowed down, stopped, and opened its doors. The announcer, 1st Avenue, 3rd next, stand clear. This time I poked my head out quickly and saw it definitely was 1st Avenue. I spoke up shyly, to no one in particular. Hey, did anyone notice we stopped at 1st Avenue 3 times? But just 1 or 2 people kind of looked up quizzically and then evaded eye contact. The doors then closed. The train took off, slowed down after 30 or so seconds, and opened. 3rd Avenue. Union Square next, stand clear. The train then continued west down the track, normal as could be. For years I've thought about this event. I was there, cognizant and clear-eyed as ever, clutching a coffee. But I've never found any explanation. 2. I'm 47 years old. My brother is 45 years old. And once when I was about 5 years old, he and I were jumping off of my bed's headboard. It had a whole bookshelf built into it, so it was pretty beefy and sturdy. And trying to flap our arms to fly. Of course we jump, flap our arms, and land right in the middle of the bed. Finally, my brother said, "I'm gonna fly. I'm going to do it this time." He then jumps off the headboard and flaps his arms as fast as he can. He starts to come down and then starts flapping his arms faster. Then something happened that neither of us expected. He flew up. When we were jumping off the headboard, the ceiling was still a few feet above our heads, but then he started flying up. Right up until he hit his head on the ceiling and then fell to the foot of my twin bed. Then rolled forward and fell to the floor. We then looked at each other and realized that he had flew, and that it was possible. We got all excited and started trying to do it again and again. We ended up breaking my bed, and got in trouble. We tried to tell my mom and dad what happened, but they always made up some excuse as to what happened, and that we must have made it up. We were never able to replicate the results again, but we both remember what happened. We even spoke about it 2 days ago when I went to his house for dinner. But even he thinks that we might be remembering it wrong. The thing is though, he flew up higher than we could jump, he hit his head on the ceiling, and he landed further down the length of the bed than we had previously done. And I remember clearly seeing him start to come down and then change direction and go up higher and hit his head. I honestly have absolutely no idea how it could have happened, and logically speaking it makes no sense. But that is exactly how it happened, and I cannot reasonably explain it. But it happened. 3. Just yesterday, actually. I had drawn 2 pictures like Howo a month or so ago and recently needed some information I had typed down when I showed them to some friends online. The thing was, I couldn't find the images anywhere. I checked my chat histories on things like Discord and in my texts. Hell, I even tried to find the Reddit, Twitter, and Tumblr posts I had made, but there was nothing. I had printed them out at some point, and they were pinned to a corkboard. Guess what? Fucking gone. My family didn't remember putting the images up for me. Even the art program I used to draw them, IBS Paint X, didn't have the images. I'd have no reason to delete them from anywhere. And yet, not a single site or application I had posted these pictures in had them. I could understand one thing, but everywhere, literally everywhere, people I asked said they remembered vaguely seeing the images but couldn't find them as well. Seriously. Out of what had to be at least 50 plus people across different platforms, not a single person could find proof these images existed. The only way I know they exist is because I have them in my gallery. I still don't know why or where these posts and messages went, or why specifically these 2 images decided to be fucking purged from literally everywhere. But I felt like I'm going crazy. 4. When I was a kid in the 1970s, I lived out in the boonies between Cleveland and Akron, Ohio. We had a large house sitting on several acres of land, most of it being heavily wooded. There was a large hill in the front yard, sloping downward away from the front of the house. One late November, we had enough snow so that my brother and I could go sledding. I hopped onto my trusty flexible flyer runner sled and bolted down the hill. My brother was still at the top of the hill as I descended. After I came to a complete stop, I began to dig around for a mitten that fell off. I didn't dig far until I saw light peeking out from the ground. shining upward at me. I cleared away some more snow, and couldn't believe what I saw. I could see daylight. Not only that, but I could see about 50 feet down and make out a couple of houses and a street, all through an 8-inch hole that I dug in my front yard. There was apparently a whole neighborhood that I could see through this hole, all below me through this tiny passage. This wasn't an area of the country with any mountains, cliffs, or overhangs, no. This was a world that was somehow visible in a place that should have been invisible, which was within 50 feet of dirt and rock, covered in snow. My brother then descends down the hill on his sled as I'm sitting there stunned. I turned away for an instant to look at him, then looked back. The world I'd discovered was now gone. I could now only see dormant grass underneath the snow that I had previously cleared away. The next day I sledded down the hill again and looked in the same place for the mystery neighborhood, but I never saw it again. The only person I ever told is my wife, and it was many years later. She, of course, looked at me like I was nuts, and who could blame her? 5. Glitch? Or just terrible at finding things. I just got a bunch of jewelry from my mom and my grandma as they were going through some vintage jewelry that they have not worn in years. I got a bunch of stuff, but specifically I started to wear the many rings that they gave me. There's 3 rings that I have been wearing every single day, but I take them off at night to sleep. Today as I was getting dressed, I realized I could not find these 3 rings. My roommate was also in my room, and we searched for a solid 10 minutes. Until we finally gave up and I put on 2 other rings. At around midnight, me and the same roommate went back into my room and were just hanging out. I decided I was going to go shower. When I got up to shower, I looked at my bedside table and the 3 rings were sitting there. Not covered by anything, not even close to anything else sitting on the bedside table. They were sitting clearly visible. My roommate and I both searched through and on top of my bedside table while trying to find them earlier in the day. We tried to brush it off. And then I realized, where are the 2 rings I was wearing today? Not on my hand. Not on the table. Not where I hang my rings. Not where I put my other jewelry when I took it off today. We started to feel a little weirded out, but I went to get in the shower anyways. As I was undressing, I noticed 1 ring was back on my finger. I ran back into my room, towel slipping, and held my hand up. We freaked out a little, and I proceeded to hang the ring off my finger where my other rings hang. Finally, I get myself into the shower. When I get out, my roommate is still in my room waiting for me, when she notices the last missing ring, sitting on my desk, near absolutely nothing else. We had checked the desk multiple times today. What is even happening? Are me and my roommate actually just blind, or is there something deeper actually happening here? 6. Before reading my story, keep this in the back of your mind. I am legally blind with macular degeneration, reduced field of view, and my right eye is missing its lens. And all my vision is 22/100ths. Which, to help you visualize what I see, imagine the video quality of a home movie from the 60s on a Super 8 slightly blurred ANF, more so around the edges. About 4 years ago, I took the Metra in from the suburbs to Union Station in Chicago to see my transplant team at UIC. Train pulls into the station. I open up my seeing eye cane. I can't see the lower half of my sight, and so can't see where my feet step, which is a twisted ankle in a pothole waiting to happen. Additionally, it signals to others my vision loss, which smooths out any difficulties. And I head out through the big ballroom, put my sunglasses on, head to my exit where my bus stop is on the other side of the street. I get to my stop and mingle in with the crowd. I remember it was a pretty bright and somewhat warm day out, so I didn't take my sunglasses off and just waited for the bus to arrive. This is where the Matrix happened. As I'm standing at the stop kinda blankly looking forward, I notice a man step in front of my left field of view, about 3 inches ahead, and looking in the same direction. I was looking at the back of his head, or to be more precise, I was looking at the government agent earbud he was wearing in his right ear, complete with agent sunglasses and business suit. He slowly looked to the right, the left, and then crossed the street very much like someone scanning for a target, and didn't care if he was seen in return. I could tell he crosses the street and entered another crowd before I couldn't tell him apart from anyone else. A few minutes later, my bus arrived and I got on and considered what I saw. I saw an actual agent looking for red pills around Union Station. I saw a FBI agent who, for whatever reason, was dressed like a businessman, with sunglasses and a wired earpiece, walking around Union Station in a way that suggested something was happening. They didn't want the public to be aware of their presence, but this guy clearly didn't understand the idea of blending in regarding body language and street crossing. I somehow wandered onto a hidden chute for a street scene in Matrix 4. I haven't seen the film yet, so no spoilers for me. It was a crazy person cosplay as an agent, and I happened to spot him that day. An actual possibility given some people I've seen in and around Union before. That's my story. Granted, it's not a déjà vu or a simulation breaker. and I even came up with rational explanations. But still, that whole thing had a vibe of unreality for me. 7. I have been looking for an answer to what I had witnessed a few years back, probably in the year 2010. At the time, I was living in a different house that had a murder/suicide take place on the same land that our house was built on, and of course we only got to know about it too late. Anyway, what followed after that was a series of eerie events. The feeling of being followed, watched, hearing footsteps, hearing knocks late at night, things like that. And even though I've been heavy on the paranormal, loved watching horror movies, I'd still try to rationalize things. I would always think to myself that everything could be explained. But as time went on, things escalated to my cousins telling me that they had just seen me walk out from my room a few minutes ago, when I was actually still in my room and had just come out for a glass of water at that very moment. I'd keep thinking that they were trying to scare me because it would keep happening on different occasions, until my parents would start saying the same thing. Even then, I would not think much about it. But one night changed everything. Although I have to mention that scarier things has happened to me. But this incident is something that I still can't wrap my brain around. I was still in school, so I had to sleep early, and it was around 10 p.m. at night when I had last checked my phone before finally deciding to sleep. I obviously still slept late and I was up reading a book. And when I had dozed off, I dreamt of 2 identical Grim Reapers standing at the right side of my bed, but they were glitching. It had a scythe and a hood with no face but pure darkness in its place. It was so creepy that it woke me up, only to find the same apparitions of the Grim Reaper that I had seen in my dream, but instead of 2, there were 3 of them in the same position. 2 of them were glitching and they were on the right side of my bed, and one of them that wasn't glitching and looked as real as the dark of the night was at the foot of my mother's, only to see it following me. But for some reason it couldn't enter my mother's room, and I think it might have been because of the cross that hung in my mother's room. It still scares me to death, and I have no idea what it means. Before that, I didn't even know its existence or heard of its folklore or such. I literally had to Google it. So if you have any idea about what it might have meant or any similar experience, then please let me know. 8. So back in 2020, me and my friend went to a McDonald's at a pretty popular landmark in our city. Just to give a little description of this place, it's like this vintage town that used to be a city built around the 1500s when the Spaniards colonized our country. So anyway, we were just casually walking around the area when we stopped at a McDonald's in the middle of the road. We went inside and I saw an American teen there, around my age, sitting at a table. This isn't a major part of the story at all, but it was just a tiny detail that I remembered to confirm that this actually happened, and I wasn't dreaming. So anyway, we grabbed coffee and I posted it to my Facebook story. And my on and off boyfriend replied to it and asked me if we could go there later so I can give him a tour. Me and my friend went home first to rest, and after 3 hours or so, I went back to the place to meet the guy. We took the same route that me and my friend walked. We were having a good time, but something was kinda odd, since it felt like ages had passed already and we still haven't come across a McDonald's. I saw a structure that we were in front of, and I knew that we already should have walked past the fast food place by now, so we went back just in case we missed it. It was pretty dark, so there was a possibility that we did. Walked again, and this time we kept our eyes at the other side of the road, which is where the buildings are. And boom, none. No signs of McDonald's whatsoever. I was so confused, and he probably thought that I was pranking him. We ended up going to a different branch and never looked for it that night. 2 years have passed. I've been to that place so many times. Once or twice a month maybe. I like going there alone. And I still haven't found that branch of McDonald's at all. I found a different one, but it is built beside a Starbucks, and I knew that there were no Starbucks when me and my friend went there. It was clear as day, and I still remember everything. The signpost on the entrance, the layout of the interior, the white boy that looked up at me, the face of the lady that took my order. It was like it just all disappeared into thin air. I don't talk to that boy anymore, so I can't ask him about it, and I can't seem to explain it to my friend either, since it just feels so odd to talk about. Shit still baffles me to this day, and I always still look for it, even though I've probably memorized the map of the city at this point. Weird.